G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Aussie Starcraft as we continue to bring you some of the excellent games that took place at Dreamhack Bucharest. Now in the top left hand corner of merry-go-round, as our red Zerg player, it is going to be STLife. In the top right hand corner as our blue Protoss player, it's going to be Stardust taking the field for teams mYi and Sanity. So it is going to be a Zerg versus Protoss game here on merry-go-round. It is quite an interesting round. Most of you will have played on this in the map pool, new this season. And quite interesting, it's been a little while since we've seen a 3-player map in the 1v1 ladder. It does produce some pretty interesting dynamics, and it is one of the maps that's starting to become quite popular with Zerg players. One of the reasons for it is the many avenues of attack. You can see there in these sort of spawn locations, with the natural expansion being below the Zerg player, he can directly traverse the middle of the map that is covered by a watchtower. It also has alternative attack lanes to the top and to the bottom. The Zerg player is really able to run his opponents around, as Zerg does tend to be a lot more mobile a race. It does also feature heavily into some Protoss and Terran builds as well, particularly with these high ground, low ground advantages. Terran players love to do the push into the third base off of these ramps. Now, obviously, depending on where the various bases are, for example, if you have a spawn in the top left and bottom central location, the Zerg player often will find his base being pushed by a Terran player from this high ground location. So very dangerous, but we are going to be playing across the map today. And we'll see just how these players choose to put that to test. Looks like we're actually going to have a Forge Fast expand out of Stardust, something that in the past was a lot less common, but now you seem to be seeing a lot more of Stardust. Actually, with the potential to cannon rush behind here, actually seems to be going for it here. Going to throw down that pylon very quickly. Has another 200 minerals. Could always choose to throw down a cannon should he so desire, and make it quite difficult for Life to clean this up, particularly as pylon almost finished up now, so drones can get a very limited angle of engagement based on the sheer amount of surface area that's actually covered by these mineral patches. We actually see a second probe coming here. Going to be able to drop a cannon and 2 pylons here. That's going to make it very difficult to attack this cannon and cause considerable problems for Life here. A second cannon actually being thrown down behind the mineral line, and the news is all bad for Life here, as this cannon rush just going to do a lot of damage and actually prevent a lot of mining time for Life here. So Life has a few difficult choices to make. This cannon being focused down very quickly by drones. Unfortunately, another cannon is going to finish up, and that cannon's going to start raking in these drone kills very quickly. 2 drones do go down. A third one looks like it will likewise drop here, and that cannon's just going to continue racking the kills. Life trying to actually polish these cannons off with drones alone, and sheer determination. He may actually do it. The second cannon does drop there, and now there's a bundle of useless pylons here. There's a few Zerglings clean up the drones. It looks like it's now Stardust that's actually in a little bit of strife here. Needs to wall in before these Zerglings can make it across the map, but unfortunately he spent too many minerals on those pylons, so we have 3 useless pylons in his mineral line, but 10 or 12 Zerglings making their way across the field. There's no Zealots on the field. There's very little of anything really for Stardust, and Stardust may actually have to wall himself in with a pylon here. It's not something he'd really care to do, but there it is. Cannon will finish up and force these Zerglings away, but that's yet more minerals spent on that pylon. So there's a very expensive decision from Stardust to do this cannon rush, and the pylons are going to be a little bit of a problem, as Life needs to clean those up to be able to mine effectively, but in reality that cannon rush was dealt with quite nicely by Life. A little bit of resources lost in the mining, but managed to just drop those by pulling pretty much exactly the amount of drones he needed. If he'd gone a few light, he would have really struggled to kill that cannon in time, but fortunately for Life, he's got the skills that kill and able to focus down those cannons quite quickly. Looks like the game will stabilise. Life having cleaned out his expansion. Stardust actually going to throw up his cyber core now, so in the next couple of minutes we will see what tech choice Stardust decides to follow up with. Has got his own Nexus up and running at his expansion, so looks like we'll see a somewhat normal game progress from here. Life actually throwing down a 3rd base now, so going very economic on the back of what is a really delayed start. Hasn't saturated either his main or natural base, but regardless going to throw down the 3rd base. I like this choice from Life. Very greedy, very well, certainly greedy, a bit of a bold move, and one that could well pay itself off in dividends, particularly if he can continue to posture with these Zerglings and make Stardust reticent to leave his base. This sort of greedy aggression can really pay off, but the problem for it is if Stardust throws down a stack of gateways and goes for some sort of aggressive two-base timing, Life could find himself really struggling with either poor creep spread to connect the bases, or could just lack the units he needs to actually deal with it properly. As we can see, robotics facility is down. We have a second sentry on its way, and there's every indication from Stardust that he'll actually be going for some sort of two-base sentry immortal push. So we'll see if Life can deal with this. Life's Zerglings being very active over here. We'll see this as soon as it decides to move out. Perhaps clean up that debris is not the best idea just yet. These Zerglings looking for any opportunity they can to try and make it into the base. But third base now up and running, Mothership Core actually coming out to harass, and this is one of the frustrations for Life to this this third base. Not yet joined by Creep. The Queen's very long way to travel. Queen almost completed here, but this Mothership Core was able to prevent some mining at that base. So not bad from Stardust using the Mothership Core to get some work done there. We have 3 sentries and a 4th almost completed, plus 1 weapons almost done as well. And Stardust actually with a warp prism on the way from this robotics facility. I really like that. Warp prism play, always fun to watch. I think Stardust may actually be going for the play where he tries to force field the ramp from above and do damage to Life that way. But I'm curious to see if he can pull that off. We're gonna have 4 sentries in it, so no immortal. The immortal's going to be follow up, but you've got to be very careful. These Zerglings actually going to see the warp prism moving out now, so I imagine that Life will be able to prepare for this. Queen trying to move into position. He knows exactly where that warp prism is going. We have a Queen on both the low and the high ground. I'm going to get 2 Queens up here to ensure that these units can't come down. And this may very quickly put an end to that warp prism harass. Stardust going to be forced to unload now. And a warp in a few zealots here. And the immortal could always move out across the field. Unfortunately, no second immortal on the way, even though Stardust hovering heck of a lot of minerals and gas. They got a little bit distracted. 3 zealots is going to move up. Plenty of Zerglings here to surround them, so got to be super careful here. All the zealots could well be wiped out very quickly. May even drop the sentries on the high ground. Wouldn't have been a bad choice. Would have allowed him to focus down some of those Zerglings from the high ground. There's no high ground vision for Life, so would have liked to see him try that. Always nice to see the terrain used to your advantage. Life here got an Overlord in position to scout this base. Zerglings unable to make their way in there. Going to cancel that building so they can continue to move in and out. This time we do have the sentries on the high ground. Oh, the immortal potentially getting caught there, but instead it seems like Life going for the much juicier run by. There are a few force fields here, and these Zerglings not going to be able to make it into the base. Have Life out spotting for a third base. Stone third base going quite strong. He does know he's at the economic advantage. We have the Groove Spines coming out for the Hydralis, which is exactly what you want to do to deal with this sort of 2-base gateway and robo pressure. The Hydralis is very good against gateway units, also great DPS against the Immortal. You don't want large batches of damage, you want lots of rapid fire, little doses of damage. In other words, you don't want a rocket launcher, you want a machine gun. The Hydralis, particularly in the post-buff environment, very much the machine gun approach. But there is a lot of sentries here with force fields. You actually have 11 sentries. Stack of force is actually force fielding the ramp, so no other units can make it down. You've got to be careful though, we'll eventually run out of force fields. Going to renew those to put some pressure on this third base. We have Life pulling his drones here to try and make the most of this. Occasionally even drones in the fight. Unfortunately for Life, great force fields are keeping a lot of his Hydralis out of play, but force fields at the main ramp drop. Warp Prism's going to go down. There's plenty of Hydralis and Queens focusing down these Immortals. 1 Immortal has gone down. 2 and 3 look to be surrounded by Zerglings. Hydralis is going to be a lot of damage. Unfortunately, the lack of that Warp Prism is going to prevent Stardust from reinforcing this from any nearby location. Second Immortal going to be picked off here. The Zerglings managed to pluck off that last kill and actually almost getting a sentry as well. And it looks like Stardust will have to beat a retreat here. There's far too many Zerglings and Hydralis. Life getting that creep down just in time for that attack made all the difference. But some great force fields almost allowed him to dig through. Life did take substantial economic damage, and you can see lost 23 workers there, so very much evened up the Harvesters tab to 48 workers each. But as we can see, production tab a lot more going on for our Zerg player Life than than there is for Stardust right now. A few sentries and a few zealots being warped in, but Life has Stardust contained on 2 bases. These pylons repeatedly getting blown up to allow for a little bit of room. Life going to be dropping some creep on one potential 3rd base location. I like that move. The Zergling going to be being difficult at the other. They've really got Stardust confined on 2 bases. Stardust has to make the choice: does he bring his army back to kill off this Zergling and this Overlord to take a 3rd, or does he continue to try and put pressure on this 3rd base location of Life? If he can crack this 3rd base, it will, well, depending on his losses, could well be GG for Life, as 2 base Protoss to 2 base Zerg is not a comfortable position for the Zerg to be in any day of the week. No blink on these Stalkers. +1/+1 has finished up for Stardust, with Life currently without any upgrades. There's quite a quick timing on that +1 attack, really trying to use these units to maximum damage, as gateway units do rapidly lose their effectiveness, particularly as the Zerg army starts to swarm up. We are starting to see some critical mass now, 140 supply to 124, and we know that that's not entirely drones. A good chunk of that is actually in this army supply that we're looking at here, and Hydralisk is a very scary composition, particularly Ling Hydra, and the main reason for that is there's a few zealots in here. Oh, actually there's 15 of them, so quite a lot of zealots. The early attack we saw a lot more Stalkers, and Stalkers really struggle to focus down the Zerglings. The Zerglings then take up a lot of the damage, while the Hydras deal the DPS on the Zerg. So we have a big Zergling run by making it through into the main base of Stardust, and these Zerglings going to be able to do a lot of damage here if they actually will focus down some units. We have the Protoss army being forced back, and the Zerg actually going to engage this middle location. Stardust forced to save his 3rd base, can't really afford to pull any units off. Zealots do manage to clean up, but I think we'll see that Life, no, actually only grabbing 1 Zergling there, so not as one worker, sorry, not 1 Zergling. Only grabbing 1 worker, not doing quite as much damage as we perhaps would have expected, though. We have the Hydras starting to make their way up, but fighting that Protoss army on the high ground, not the best decision. Nice force fields there from Stardust, going to serve up plenty of these Hydras like dinner on the Zealot's plate. And unfortunately, that's going to be the end of the road for Life here. Not going to be able to make it through those forces, and facing a very unenviable decision. Do I move up the ramp to try and engage these units and get that split again? You really can't afford to lose the Hydras, particularly not with the Colossus that's now on the way. The Colossus should be moving out across the field any time. We have the Hydra's doing great DPS, but unfortunately for him, Stardust is just sitting at maximum distance. Perfect spot to actually deter these sort of attacks, and the force field's just copying a lot of damage. Looks like Life going to try and make his way around here, get some sort of surround. The Colossus has made its way out into the middle of the field. Thermal Lance is nearly complete, along with the Protoss ground weapons level 2 and a 2nd Colossus. So things starting to look up for Stardust here. He lost that earlier engagement, but now with the Colossi being added in, these Hydras really need some sort of damage, some sort of tank to prevent. Nice, Ling's actually going to pick up five of these sentries. That's a massive pick off there for Life. Able to grab all of those sentries. A little bit of carelessness on Stardust's part is going to allow Life to really make the most of this and force out a photon overcharge. So Stardust has lost his crowd control technique. Those sentries don't do a lot of damage, but it's the crowd control that makes them all important. The fact that you can herd the Zerg army into the firepower of the Colossus. We have a massive Hydra run by actually in the main base of Life. There is a Colossus here, but not entirely confident of his ability to kill these Hydras. Hydras could easily focus that down if he's not careful. But Hydras are pretty slow off creep. Looks like they will get cleaned up. That was a big counterattack. Took out several gateways and tech structures there, but looks like Life's going to be pushing the 3rd base of Stardust here. 1 Colossus, so going to be able to dance back and forth. Unable to snipe that Nexus is going to be a big problem here for Life, and Life falls back under the relentless Stalker. It's now 2-1 to the 1-1 upgrades of Life. Unfortunately, Life never took the time to drop the creep tumor, so these Queens actually just getting mowed down by the Stalkers and Colossus up to 8 kills, the Immortal on 7 himself. These Protoss units just starting to be very cost efficient, and you can see 15,000 resources lost to 11,000 now. 3 base apiece, I think, is a very uncomfortable position for Life. Engaging on creep though, not the best idea for Stardust. I'd love to see Life throw down a Spire, something to deal with these Colossi, because Colossi versus Hydralisk own all day, every day. Life actually going for sending out another hit squad of Hydralisk and Zerglings, edging their way across the map. And this is what we were saying about merry-go-round. There's so many of these little paths as a Protoss player. If you've got the time to spare and your robo's not doing anything, you should really knock out an observer or two, place them in the other traffic lanes so that you don't cop as many run-bys as we've seen get into Stardust base. So it looks like these Zerglings will make their way in, the Hydralisk here as well. And Stardust trying to decide whether he can engage, and I think any moment now we'll see him go for its 167 supply to 158, but I think with 3 Colossi, Stardust is sitting pretty comfortable here. There's a lot of Stalkers, 2-1 Stalkers. We have these Zerglings making it into the third base as a Zealot, though he's going to clean up a lot of these. Big fight going down now, and we have Guardian Shield and Colossus just absolutely going to work. Colossus kill count flying through the roof, 10 kills on one, 15 on another, and Life taps out of that game. Good game for Stardust, able to just continually apply that pressure. Unfortunately for Life, really got fixated on that Zergling Hydra composition. He got to it early on and it won him a battle, but was a bit slow to transition out of that, so a bit unfortunate for Stardust. And we will have Life taking that game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We have a stack more StarCraft coming up after this. This is only the quarterfinals of Dreamhack Bucharest, guys, so we will be casting a lot more games both from this stage of the tournament and the ensuing semi-finals and finals. So hope you guys are in the mood for some sick StarCraft 2 action. You're going to get it all here on Aussie StarCraft. Thanks, guys.